Hello viewer, I hope you're having a nice day no matter where you are in the world. If you're watching this video, then I hope you watched our part 1 of this series, if you can call it a series. I talked about the downsides to being a teenager. A lot of you guys asked for more. Let's be honest, we all know there are more than 10 things. So, my name is Danny Burke and this is the top 10 worst things about being a teenager, part 2. Alright, starting off at number 10, school. Now I don't know how I missed this one out from part 1, but I'm making up for it by putting it right at the start of the video. As you move from childhood to your teenage years, a lot of things change in your life. You grow physically, mentally, and experience new things you only dreamed of as a child. But you know one thing that never changes? School. Most teenagers stop finding school interesting or stimulating. I'm sure we could talk all day about how the school system does that. School in your teenage years gets harder too. There's more work, there's more pressure, and more expectations to do well. I could go on all day, but I won't, because I'm sure some of you have schoolwork to go and do. At number 9, love. Or love lives. If there's one thing that all teenagers seem to struggle with, it's how to approach their crush. It seems like a cruel joke that the universe is playing on all teenagers. Your hormones are racing and you're chasing your crush, but oh dear, you have no idea how to approach them. There's no manual you can just read on teenage love lives. It's just one long, awkward guessing game, to be honest. The good news though is that it's exactly the same for adults. They're just a little bit better at hiding it. At number 8, always being tired. Always. When I was a teenager, I was always tired. Sometimes if I slept for like 10 hours, that would actually exhaust me and I'd feel even more tired, if that's even possible. Teenagers need between 8 and 10 hours of sleep a night, but most teenagers don't get anywhere near that. Now I used to be tired all day at school and then I end up being most awake around about midnight when I should be asleep, which means I would then be tired in the morning, and then I just repeated that for about 5 years. I'm getting a bit tired just thinking about it. Moving on to number 7, arguing with your parents. Now when you're a little kid, you want a toy, your parent says no, you cry, you get over it, and everybody moves on with their lives. It's a pretty one-sided argument. When you're a teenager though, suddenly there are a million bigger things out there to clash with your parents about. You argue about school, you argue about money, you argue about going out, you argue about arguing. Parents and teenagers have clashed for thousands of years for a million different reasons. Communication can help sort things out, but at the end of the day, it's kind of a fact of life. Don't worry, things usually get smoother when you're an adult. At number 6, drifting friend. I can list on one hand the amount of friends I have that were also my friends when I was a teenager. When you're a teenager, it feels like your group of 20 friends will stay together forever. But the kind of sad reality is that teenagers change very quickly, and so friendships can too. This can be hard because it feels like you're losing big parts of your life. The comfort you can take is that at the end of the day, the friends you do keep as you leave your teenage years were the real friends all along, and they're much more likely to be your friends forever. Your teenage years are kind of like a big friend competition where only the strong survive. Kinda. Not really actually. Alright, moving on to number 5 now. We have expectations. When you're a little kid, people expect you to be a little kid. Easy. Anyone can do that. As an adult, you set your own expectations and you really only have to answer to yourself. It's not the same for teenagers though. Everywhere a teenager looks, there are expectations they have to meet from their teachers, from their parents, from their relatives, quite often just trying to make sure you realize the potential they see in you. But often it doesn't really feel like that. It feels like added pressure coming from all sides. At the end of the day though, the best expectation is the expectation to just do your best. Aww. Next up at number 4, no time for anything. Teenagers spend about 25 hours a week in school. There's also maybe 6 or 7 hours of homework there. Some teenagers often have after school activities or clubs that can take up to 3 or 4 hours a week. Then they want to meet up with their friends for maybe 10 hours a week. Then their family wants to take them somewhere for a few hours. Suddenly, as it all adds up, teenagers find themselves with very little time to do anything else. Some spend any free time they do have just kind of napping or sleeping, just to do it all over again the very next week. They say your teenage years are the best time of your life, but what if you don't have the time? That sounded a lot deeper in my head. Alright, coming in at the number 3 spot now, we have peer pressure. Peer pressure exists in adulthood, but it's found the most in teenage years. As teenagers look for social acceptance among their peers, they may end up doing or saying things that they never thought they'd do just to fit in. Now sometimes these can be kind of harmless, like having their hair a certain way, but sometimes peer pressure can lead to drugs and, you know, you've all seen those old videos from the 90s, I'm sure.
Pot, you know, marijuana. Oh, well, I don't know. What, chicken? I'm not chicken. You're a turkey.
The point is, peer pressure is always going to exist when you have groups of teenagers, but most teenagers are smart enough to know when to say no. At number 2, loss of innocence. Okay, wait a sec. I know this one sounds a little bit lame, but hear me out. Teenagers are smarter than kids. They have more life experience and they understand more about the world. Now, in many ways, that's a great thing, but it's also a bit of a double-edged sword. Teenagers are also no longer naive to all the bad things in the world. They understand things like depression, mental illness, disease, aging, death, wars and poverty in ways that small kids just can't. Some teenagers even end up wishing they could just be a kid again for one day, where their biggest concern in life was what cartoon would be on TV. Wow, that got pretty deep. Okay, we've reached number 1 now, guys, and we have being self-conscious. Now, if you take all of the things we've talked about in this video so far, it's no surprise that people are more self-conscious as teenagers than they are probably at any other point in their lives. Because of schools and peer pressure, changing bodies and minds, teenagers are always analysing how they are and comparing themselves to others around them. Some teenagers are more resistant to this than others. They might not really care if they stand out in any way, but a lot of teenagers do care, and it can be a pretty exhausting thing to worry about every single day. I guess if all teenagers are a little bit self-conscious, then they kind of all fit in a weird way. Alright, it's time for me to stop babbling on about being a teenager. We could make a part 3 if you guys want. I'd love to hear from you guys if I've missed out any of the worst things about being a teenager. In the meantime, have a great day, obviously. My name is Danny Burke, and I will see you all in the next video.